Section number 7 of Selected Letters of Beethoven. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Recording by Squid Vazhlikova. Selected Letters, number 66, 67, and 93, by Ludwig von Beethoven, as compiled and with footnotes by Dr. Ludwig Noel, and translated by Lady Grace Wallace. Letter number 66. To Bettina, Brentano, footnote number 1. Vienna, August 11th, 1810. My dearest friend, never was there a lovelier spring than this year. I say so, and feel it too, because it was then I first knew you. You have yourself seen that in society I am like a fish on the sand, which writhes and writhes, but cannot get away till some benevolent Galatea casts it back into the mighty ocean. I was indeed fairly stranded, dearest friend, when surprised by you, at a moment in which moroseness had entirely mastered me. But how quickly it vanished at your aspect. I was at once conscious that you came from another sphere than this absurd world, where, with the best inclinations, I cannot open my ears. I am a wretched creature, and yet I complain of others. You will forgive this from the goodness of heart that beams in your eyes, and the good sense manifested by your ears. At least they understand how to flatter, by the mode in which they listen. My ears are, alas, a partition wall, through which I can with difficulty hold any intercourse with my fellow creatures. Otherwise, perhaps, I might have felt more assured with you, but I was only conscious of the full, intelligent glance from your eyes, which affected me so deeply that never can I forget it. My dear friend, dearest girl, art? Who comprehends it? With whom can I discuss this mighty goddess? How precious to me were the few days when we talked together, or, I should rather say, corresponded. I have carefully preserved the little notes, with your clever, charming, most charming answers, so I have to thank my defective hearing for the greater part of our fugitive intercourse being written down. Since you left this, I have had some unhappy hours of the deepest gloom, when I could do nothing. I wandered for 3 hours in the Schönbrunn Allee after you left us, but no angel met me there to take possession of me as you did. Pray forgive, my dear friend, this deviation from the original key. But I must have such intervals as a relief to my heart. You have no doubt written to Goethe about me. I would gladly bury my head in a sack, so that I might neither see nor hear what goes on in the world, because I shall meet you there no more. But I shall get a letter from you? Hope sustains me, as it does half the world. Through life she has been my close companion, or what would have become of me? I sent you Kennst du das Land, written with my own hand, as a remembrance of the hour when I first knew you. I send you another that I composed since I bade you farewell, my dearest, fairest sweetheart. Herz, mein Herz, was soll das geben? Was bedrängt dich so sehr? Welch ein neues, fremdes Leben! Ich erkenne dich nicht mehr. Now answer me, my dearest friend, and say what is to become of me, since my heart has turned such a rebel. Write to your most faithful friend, Beethoven. Footnote number 1. The celebrated letters to Bettina are given here exactly as published in her book, Ilius Pamphilius und die Ambrosia. Berlin, Arnim, 1857, in 2 volumes. I never myself had any doubts of their being genuine, with the exception perhaps of words in the middle of the 3rd letter, nor can any one now distrust them, especially after the publication of Beethoven's letters. But for the sake of those for whom the weight of innate conviction is not sufficient proof, I may here mention that in December 1864, Professor Moritz Carriere, in Munich, when conversing with me about Beethoven's letters, expressly assured me that these 3 letters were genuine, and that he had seen them in Berlin at Bettina von Arnim's in 1839, and read them most attentively and with the deepest interest. From their important contents, he urged their immediate publication, and when this shortly after ensued, no change whatever struck him as having been made in the original text. On the contrary, he still perfectly remembered that the much disputed phraseology, and especially the incident with Goethe, was precisely the same as in the originals. This testimony seems to me the more weighty, as Monsieur Carriere must not in such matters be looked on as a novice, but as a competent judge, who has carefully studied all that concerns our literary heroes, and who would not permit anything to be falsely imputed to Beethoven any more than to Goethe. Beethoven's biography is, however, the proper place to discuss more closely such things, especially his character and his conduct in this particular case. At present we only refer, in general terms, to the 1st chapter of Beethoven's Jugend, which gives all the facts connected with these letters to Bettina and the following ones. A characteristic likeness of Beethoven thus impressed itself on the mind of the biographer, and was reproduced in a few bold outlines in his biography. These letters could not, however, possibly be given in extenso in a general introduction to a comprehensive biography. End of letter number 66. Letter number 67, to Bettina Brentano, Vienna, February 10th, 1811. Dear and beloved friend, I have now received 2 letters from you, while those to Tony show that you still remember me, and even too kindly. I carried your letter about with me the whole summer, and it often made me feel very happy. Though I do not frequently write to you, and you never see me, still I write you letters by thousands in my thoughts. I can easily imagine what you feel at Berlin, in witnessing all the noxious frivolity of the world's rabble. Footnote 1. Even had you not written it to me yourself. Such prating about art, and yet no results. The best description of this is to be found in Schiller's poem, Die Flüsse, where the river Spree is supposed to speak. You are going to be married, my dear friend, or are already so, and I have had no chance of seeing you even once previously. May all the felicity that marriage ever bestowed on husband and wife attend you both. What can I say to you of myself? I can only exclaim, with Joanna, "Compassionate my fate!" If I am spared for some years to come, I will thank the Omniscient, the Omnipotent, for the boon, as I do for all other weal and woe. If you mention me when you write to Goethe, strive to find words expressive of my deep reverence and admiration. I am about to write to him myself with regard to Egmont, for which I have written some music solely from my love for his poetry, which also delights me. Who can be sufficiently grateful to a great poet, the most precious jewel of a nation? Now no more, my dear sweet friend. I only come home this morning at 4 o'clock from an orgy, where I laughed heartily, but to-day I feel as if I could weep as sadly. Turbulent pleasures always violently recoil on my spirits. As for Clemens, note Brentano, her brother, pray thank him for his complaisance with regard to the cantata. The subject is not important enough for us here. It is very different in Berlin, and as for my affection, the sister engrosses so large a share that little remains for the brother. Will you be content with this? Now farewell, my dear, dear friend. I imprint a sorrowful kiss on your forehead, thus impressing my thoughts on it as with a seal. Write soon, very soon, to your brother, Beethoven. Footnote 1. An expression which, as well as many others, he no doubt borrowed from Bettina and introduced to please her. End of letter number 67. Letter number 93. To Bettina von Arnim, Toplitz, August 15th, 1812. My most dear, kind friend, kings and princes can indeed create professors and privy councillors, and confer titles and decorations, but they cannot make great men, spirits that soar above the base turmoil of this world. There their powers fail, and this it is that forces them to respect us. Footnote number 1. When two persons like Goethe and myself meet, these grandees cannot fail to perceive what such as we consider great. Yesterday, on our way home, we met the whole imperial family. We saw them coming some way off, when Goethe withdrew his arm from mine, in order to stand aside, and, say what I would, I could not prevail on him to make another step in advance. I pressed down my hat more firmly on my head, buttoned up my greatcoat, and, crossing my arms behind me, I made my way through the thickest portion of the crowd. Princes and courtiers formed a lane for me. Archduke Rudolph took off his hat, and the Empress bowed to me first. These great ones of the earth know me. To my infinite amusement, I saw the procession defile past Goethe, who stood aside with his hat off, bowing profoundly. I afterwards took him sharply to task for this. I gave him no quarter, and upbraided him with all his sins, especially towards you, my dear friend, as we had just been speaking of you. Heavens! If I could have lived with you as he did, believe me, I should have produced far greater things. A musician is also a poet. He too can feel himself transported into a brighter world by a pair of fine eyes, where loftier spirits sport with him and impose heavy tasks on him. What thoughts rushed into my mind when I first saw you at the observatory during a refreshing May shower, so fertilizing to me also. Footnote number 2. The most beautiful themes stole from your eyes into my heart, which shall yet enchant the world when Beethoven no longer directs. If God vouchsafes to grant me a few more years of life, I must then see you once more, my dear, most dear friend, for the voice within, to which I always listen, demands this. Spirits may love one another, and I shall ever woo yours. Your approval is dearer to me than all else in the world. I told Goethe my sentiments as to the influence praise has over men like us, and that we desire our equals to listen to us with their understanding. Emotion suits women only. Forgive me. Music ought to strike fire from the soul of man. Ah, my dear girl, how long have our feelings been identical on all points? The sole real good is some bright, kindly spirit to sympathize with us, whom we thoroughly comprehend, and from whom we need not hide our thoughts. He who wishes to appear something must in reality be something. The world must acknowledge us. It is not always unjust, but for this I care not, having a higher purpose in view. I hope to get a letter from you in Vienna. Write to me soon and fully, for a week hence I shall be there. The court leaves this tomorrow, and today they have another performance. The Empress has studied her part thoroughly. The Emperor and the Duke wished me to play some of my own music, but I refused, for they are both infatuated with Chinese porcelain. A little indulgence is required, for reason seems to have lost its empire. But I do not choose to minister to such perverse folly. I will not be a party to such absurd doings to please those princes who are constantly guilty of eccentricities of this sort. Adieu, adieu, dear one. Your letter lay all night next to my heart, and cheered me. Musicians permit themselves great license. Heavens, how I love you! Your most faithful friend and deaf brother, Beethoven. Footnote number 1. Fraulein Giantasio del Rio, in the journal she sent to the Grand Botan in 1857, states that Beethoven once declared, "It is very pleasant to associate with the great of the earth, but one must possess some quality which inspires them with respect." Footnote number 2. According to Bettina, note, see Goethe's correspondence with the child, volume 2, 193, end note, their first acquaintance was made in Beethoven's apartments. End of letter number 93. End of section number 7 of Selected Letters of Beethoven, as compiled and with footnotes by Dr. Ludwig and translated by Lady Grace Wallace. Recording by Squid Vajlakova. Found at frisco-squid.blogspot.com.